Well, I was everyone else.
I probably did it one time, but I have.
Yeah.
Are we ready, Missy?
Yep.
Okay.
Action.
Cut.
We have to do a bunch of retakes. If we have to start with.
Retakes.
Line.
Okay. Let's find all the rules and regulations, part 2.
So Randy's kind of going to go over what the discussion's been, but I kind of wanted to reiterate from, I know last time we talked about kind of the bigger boats and the wake boats and then also the docks, and kind of thinking that rather than, my concern is we might get a little bit bogged down in that ins and outs of that and trying to, we'll put that in the parking lot, so to speak, come and we'll really, so we can get the camping items updated and kind of move forward from there. And then kind of maybe that's something that we continue to gather more information on. But anyway, that's kind of, I'll let Randy take it from there.
Oh, you're doing great. So we stuck with making the changes to the camping reservations. They'll still be first come, first served with the lower, just being sites for RV and camper, with also one tent allowed accompanied by a camper. And we're stating specifically in the rules that tents are not permitted to reserve RV and camping pets. That way no more baby tents going around. The upper areas we have for tent camping only, as well as, so we just made it clarify that there's also no pop-up allowed in the tent only.
That's up on the top.
Yes, the hill, what I think they were.
Hands on.
Tents only. These are some proposed fees changes. We just want to get some feedback on what you guys think, and we can modify it from here on out as well. So currently, we have 3 tiers. We're gonna propose is to break it down to 2. City of Paola and Miami County as one set, and then non-city or county residents as another. This would be for the boats. We increased the annual to 35 from 25. And then for the non-city, we increased or decreased the daily to 15 for the year, the annual to 70. The thought was we have a hard time getting any non-city or county people to actually pay. So we hope that this would maybe get some more revenue because we'll be able to get them to pay.
Maybe we need to figure out how to get them to pay
Absolutely.
the solution.
Yes. And then so for the camping fees, we did the same thing, 2 tiers. We increased the first tier from 5 to 7, and then the last tier from 12 to 15, and we left the electrical and sewer hookups the same, additional of 5 to 2 per day. So that is all I have on the fees. Do you guys have any thoughts on the fees? Would that be something different?
I'm not a camper, so you have to.
Oh.
So a good start.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
You said they're not gonna do the online.
So this next slide.
Oh, okay.
No, you're fine. Here we go. For the online, they are going to move to online, but to get it up and running with the service that we want, it won't be right away. It'll be the second half of the season. I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we thought we were kind of bummed, but then like that might be a good trial period to not, hit right off. So next season, people are more aware of it. So we're going to go for that to have our time in the second.
Can I ask you something? Say somebody wants it. They just do something online, like reserve it for 2 weeks ahead of time. Can they do that?
So with the online thing that we're looking at, you can set it as far out or as not as you want. You can make it be only a week ahead or 2 weeks ahead or 3 weeks ahead. You can set that yourself on the program. The administrator can.
Is there a way that they mark the spot reserved so someone can just pull it in there?
Yes, we're looking at having posts put up with placards and how they can't post.
Okay.
And once they reserve it for 3 or 4 days and they're not there.
We also have an abandonment, so they're gonna be able to check in at a certain time for that reservation. If they don't check in at a certain amount of time, it comes up for first come.
Not all of them.
Not all of them
Yeah.
will be it'll be, yeah, the first, do that for the first season, and depending how we like it, I think it's split at half, so it is.
So how do you know, if I live in Olathe, how do I, get a yearly fee? I mean, do I have to come down here to City Hall or can I mail it in, or how do I get a fee to use the lake for the summer?
You pay your annual dues.
Yeah, the $70 a budget. How do I do that?
You
Well, they
can do it
just call
online.
and do it online.
Well, I thought you said you couldn't do it.
Well, I don't know that could probably be incorporated with the online, program. Right now, I would imagine they would probably just have to call either Public Works and get that, or be here on site and say, hey, I want to just pay for my annual, and then the lake caretaker takes care of that processing that.
And how do they know to call Public Works? Or I would call City Hall.
Well, I'm assuming, I haven't looked at our website, but all the, like my old stuff, a lot of those, the contact numbers, I think, are Public Works. Because I don't know, Stephanie, do we get a lot of late calls at City Hall?
We just, yeah, we just direct, yeah, like everything else. We do. Direct where they're supposed to go.
The program is Civic Rec, is that, and so that is something, it's kind of integrated, it's the same company that we use for our website, basically the overarching company. And it's something that I think we may be able to utilize for as we get this set up, but also maybe for some like pool parties, using that to sign up for that, maybe even some things at the community center. So that was one thing that kind of was enticing about this program, with its way it integrated with our website and the potential that we could utilize it in different places, not just at the lake. So those are next steps, but that's kind of an idea of what we're looking at with the program.
And that is all, yeah.
No, on the swimming permit stuff, I know I had a brief conversation with Chief Ford. I think that's something that we can kind of there again. I think we want to explore that a little bit, make sure that we kind of have that figured out before we just go with that. But I think that's something maybe next year we can kind of look at adopting, is where it's almost like a parking permit. If you're out of county, if you're in county, it doesn't matter. But if you're out of county, you almost have to have a parking permit to be in the swim area, to try to tap into some of that potential revenue there. That then we can turn around and utilize it the lake. And water quality, I talked to KDG, they're still working with the property owner with up north there, so that's still kind of in progress.
Any updates on the dam situation?
My intention is I'm trying to get our funding figured out so that we can get the geotechnical done here, maybe start late spring, early summer on that, so that then we can be set up when we're kind of doing some other projects. And we go to bond, we can put all that, lump that all in together. I kind of explored doing some temporary notes, talking with Greg Barenberg from Raymond James. Unless we do a really high, I mean, if we just do $100,000 worth of temporary notes, it doesn't make sense for us, because the cost of doing that is so high. So we can do some of that work if we feel like we got to get the cash on hand, but we've got some big projects that we've got cash kind of allocated for, so that's part of the kind of the balancing act. But we can do those and then reimburse ourselves for some of that engineering work that we needed to do. So trying to, like I said, the main thing is trying to balance where we are cash wise and making sure that we've got enough that we don't burden ourselves in case we need it. So.
Is it?
Have you guys had anybody apply for the,
Last, I was gone after Thursday, but as of Thursday, no, I'm not checked. So Friday or Monday. Yay!
Over the campus.
One of the enforcement, we had that last time.
Okay, water rate discussion, part 3.
So
This is gonna be ongoing,
I don't have any, or any additional slides or anything. I know at last study session, we kind of talked about whether we look at something this spring or maybe, which would basically be April-ish, or if we wait until the fall. Kind of, I don't want to diminish the potential need here, but I think we can probably wait until this fall, and that fits a little bit better in light of all this concern with utilities and everything that happened with the potential impact of the cold weather. So I guess that was kind of my thought tonight, is to touch base on that. And if there's additional information that you would like to have as when we go to continue that conversation, or if you have any suggestions, let me know. But we would just kind of table that for a couple of months until some of that mess settles in. Is that workable for everybody? Yeah. But like I said, in the meantime, if you have questions or concerns on that, let me know. And when we revisit that, I can incorporate that information.
people are certainly expecting large gas and electric bills this next month, and they're certainly ready.
Yeah, I know that,
Impact them significantly.
and I was gonna talk about that a little bit later, but I might just touch on that a little bit. So because there, I don't want to diminish the concern out there, but for the Paola, we are Evergy customers, we are KGS customers. So our issue is a little bit different than, say, somebody in Osawatomie or Lewisburg, because they provide those, some of those utilities, the gas in Lewisburg, electric in Osawatomie, they provide those. And so then they have tremendous expense and pinch on their cash flow. We don't have that. We might see something like that when Evergy bills us. But there's conversations ongoing about trying to figure out how do they bill their customers, and so we're kind of leading into all that. So I know that Osawatomie, I think Lewisburg, and then the county kind of get it with them as a emergency declaration. My understanding with what I've heard from the league is right now we don't really need to do that. If we get our first Evergy bill and it's through the roof, then we need to do that. But they said right now we don't know that we have an emergency because we're kind of different than where everybody else is. And a lot of reasons why they had it is because the people that they bought energy from they were having to pay those bills up front because they were bigger than everybody expected. So that's that in a nutshell.
In a few days.
What?
I think we'll see in a few days, or
Yeah.
started right.
I didn't, I knew it was cold, but one of the lead things that they had a background, and I don't know if it was just a day or an hour snapshot of the temperatures, but they were showing that there's only like a little bit in Florida and a little bit like in Arizona, New Mexico, maybe California, but that was the only places in the U.S. that were above freezing. Yeah. And it's like, you knew it was cold, but it was just cold all over. That's what was causing the issues. So.
Absolutely. Okay. Council meeting items.
So the Baptiste Drive and Hedge Lane, right turn lane project, that was a KDOT cost share program, 90/10 funding with KDOT. If you remember, because of that makeup of that project, KDOT was the one who did that project. When the bids came back, they were higher than expected. They worked with us and my engineer and kind of reviewed what the intention of the project was, and then what we really had in the scope, and decided, well, that scope needed to be kind of expanded, which therefore allowed us to qualify for a little additional funding to get the project done. With that, we got a supplemental agreement that we would sign, and there's an associated resolution with that, and then we would have a kind of authorization of funds, which was basically our commitment to that project. Our portion of that, the total project with the construction and construction engineering is $507,000 and some change. Our portion of that would be $57,000, almost 58, right at 58. So,
How much?
50, right at 58,000, $57,990.85. So, and that's the city's portion of that big project. Yeah, it's a nice to be able to take advantage of that. That project, I haven't seen a notice to proceed on that. I think that'll probably be maybe April. I know they were looking at this spring, so early spring. So, and I think that's all on that. Is there any questions? Okay, property and liability insurance. Stephanie and I met with Elliott Insurance and got that renewal. It did go up about $8,000. A lot of that was connected to our property values, and we have real cost replacement costs in those, and building materials and all that has gone up, and that's what kind of helped drive that premium up a little bit. That, and there was a little bit on auto that was, we kind of had that claim where that one truck burned up, and that kind of added to the premium on the auto side. But we have that prepared for council's approval on Tuesday. Any questions on that? Yes, we get a dividend from them each year. It's last several years, it's been over $20,000 each year. So
I remember last time. Well, the way that is really.
yeah, and I think we get that April or May. Is that right? Okay. And then we pay in all our premiums, we get refunded from last year. Any questions on that? Okay, the ratification resolution for Paola Crossing. So the Paola Crossings Council has approved a TIF for that development. We approved a CID for that development. And we've kind of also, I think, approved the, lack of a better term, initialization of a section of that TIF. So we approved the broader TIF, and we said, okay, now this is phase one TIF. That kind of corresponds with the CID. With that, we've been working with a developer on a development agreement and a public improvement cost share agreement with that developer. Those items have all been kind of approved pending staff's final approval of those. I think we're finally there, and the developer had to, we've got a couple of pieces in place, and they're looking to move forward on that. So because some of those actions have been a little bit hanging out there, Mary Carson of PWG suggested we do kind of a ratification resolution, basically saying, not necessarily reconsidering what we did, but just saying, here's the things that we did to do this. And so I think we're in place to have that, have all the signatures in place that we can do that on at the meeting on Tuesday. Any questions on that item?
And then I'll just be kind of green for everyone's already been done because it was kind of stagnant for so long.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's just because I think the TIF has been over a year, the CLD is getting close to being a year. Mary just felt like it would be best just to say, here's the things that we've done and to move forward, so. And then the last item is basically, so this, everybody approved, the citizens approved the half-cent sales tax. We need to formally pass an ordinance so that we levy that sales tax, and we just are trying to do it well ahead of time. So Mary Carson's working on that for us, and I think when I talked to her yesterday, she thought that ready to, or actually it was today, she thought that ready to go for the meeting. So. Any questions on what looks like it's going to be on the meeting? So on other business, I have a few things. Comprehensive plan. Randy and I met with Confluence last week. We've got a kind of a pre-kickoff meeting with staff scheduled for next week to kind of get some of the preliminary stuff finalized, and then we're working on getting an advisory committee put together on that. That'll be 10 or 12 people that will they will meet 5 or 6 times and kind of be the feedback loop for Confluence as they go through the project. And then, but there'll be, I think there's at least two meetings where they bring stuff to Planning Commission and Council and kind of go over where they're at, what they're doing outside of just the advisory committee. And then at the end, they would do that again. So, and that project, I think technically we're on the 10-month schedule. I think a year is we're still on track for June 1 having feedback and recommendations on kind of that part of the field component like we discussed.
How many did you say were on the advisory?
It's 10 or 12 is kind of what the target is, that we're kind of working through that, the development of that. They've got some recommendations of people that they've used, whether business people and planning commission people and all that. So we're trying to get our group finalized.
Sid, when do they plan on having that survey ready for the community?
I would anticipate that will probably go out sometime in April, and then they'll have that out for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'll take that information and develop the recommendations to get to us by that June 1.
Can we see that survey before it goes out in case we have something we want to add or delete?
Well, I guess we can. I think my concern is that we could get down in the weeds pretty fast on that, and the process gets slowed down. Would be my concern on that.
Sometimes we know the community better than we do.
What's going to be on the survey?
Well, I think it'll be, I mean, I would imagine there's going to be questions about what people prefer as far as in regards to, say, the pool. Do you prefer to add? Would you prefer to add a lot of enhancements, or you just want to get the pool kind of rehabbed and operated as it usually has, or do you want to see additional slides or whatever? Do you want, with ball fields, do you want to see a fourplex type of ball field, or are you more into, hey, let's just get what we're doing for our rec group? Do we want to spend money on, do you think there's value in the turf versus, I don't know that, because we haven't really sat down and had that deep conversation, but those are the kind of questions that I think that they're going to be asking.
Well, I want to make sure that it's something tailored to our community. It's not one to use all over the United States.
No, it's not. it'll be tailored to our community. There may be common questions that they've asked in other communities, but there'll be things tailored specifically to our community.
Let's still see.
I agree with the mayor. I think we should be able to see the questions before they finalize them. That way, if we think there's something major wrong with the questions, we can give our input on it. Because once it's out there, there's nothing we can do.
And I mean, that is council, if that's council's will, we can make that happen. I just, my concern is, we talked about timeline.
Well, it
We
shouldn't
we
take
could
long.
easily they are paid planners to get down in the weeds of this, and that's, my concern is that's maybe not council's role to decide this question versus this question. It's,
I think I would still like to read them, and it would take me about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I would glad to give you back.
Same here. And if they're,
okay, I mean, that's, we can do that, I'm just,
it should be our input on the questions.
but that's, the
We're the ones
advisory
who
committee is
represent
gonna
the people of our district.
be part of that, that's, I mean, because if honestly, if we want to get that deep in the weeds, then maybe we just say that we're not gonna worry about an advisory committee, we'll just have council do it, because council wants to be involved in it.
No, I just would like, all I'm wanting to know is I would like to see the survey questions.
But they're gonna also be multiple surveys, so do you wanna see them each round of surveys?
Well, I'd like to see the first. And then make a decision on the
We
rest
should
of
see
it.
all of them.
How are they mailing, how are they gonna send these surveys out?
By email, no, they'll be on the city website.
It'll be probably a link to, on the city website, that we will promote via Facebook, via the paper, do what we can. I think they will also provide us paper copies, so if somebody walks in to pay their water bill, they can fill out that information, and that will be like hand entered into the electronic side of things, but,
And I
There's a
think
lot of
that,
older people that do not.
yeah, there are,
The
that's,
computer at all.
and that's,
And they don't do Facebook.
I would say that that's probably nothing uncommon that they have not faced before. They
well, I'm sure they.
redo these, so, I mean, are we gonna guarantee that everybody gets a survey?
No,
I
you
don't think we
cannot.
can,
No, you cannot.
but we're gonna do our best to make sure that it gets out there, so people have the opportunity to participate if they want to.
If the information's out there and you feel strongly enough and you want to participate, you will find a way. And I agree with that. I mean, I don't have a problem. But I would still, and I don't know why that is, but I think I'd just like to see that first survey before it goes out. And I don't know if we want to see any others, but I would like to see the first.
Well, I, correct me if I'm wrong, Sid, but I think what you're saying is we just need to be careful, because I agree with you. I would like to see the questions before they go out too, because they may be worded funky, or we may look at that and say, we don't need to ask that. We know we have to do something there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to be careful and not get in so far into the weeds that
Well,
we need to
that's
tailor
right.
make the
You
questions.
don't,
Because they do questions, and I know it's not our community, but they do questions all the time. And that's what they're used to, and they're used to wording the questions. So as long as we just take a high level approach and look at it and say, okay, the generic
Yeah.
questions look okay, rather than trying to reword each question and specifically target certain areas, we've given them, that's the purpose of
No,
the first survey, is the ball field and figuring out the pool and things like that, so we can work out the financing, so.
Well,
yeah,
and
no, I
maybe
don't want to be worried.
in order for it not to get slowed down, we make sure Sid knows ahead of time what we do or don't want on there.
We still need to look at it.
So I mean, I
Right.
know, but that way
I don't know.
they already
what
have
I
an
would-
idea of what we're looking for.
You know, if we have to
But I
have
don't
all
know.
of them come by the city hall to read it, we can do that.
Well,
Because
yeah.
that shouldn't slow us down. I mean, once they got them prepared, we call a special meeting, everybody shows up, we look at them, and we either say yay or nay.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, if we let them know ahead of time, it won't slow it down. Because what if somebody sees something I don't like, and then they say, no, this isn't gonna work, and then they have to do the whole thing, then it will slow
We
it down.
shouldn't have to do the whole thing. maybe.
But I mean, it would be better to know ahead of time what you're looking for or not looking for, to not slow it down. That way, when we see them, then they should be good.
I think I know overall, but I'm not, no, I just want to read them.
And I want
I'm
to.
sorry, that's how I am.
I want to understand completely. you're going to, who's selecting the advisory committee?
Rainey and I have been discussing that.
Okay, and so, and it's their local people?
Yes.
Okay, and they will help write the survey? Or they'll have
They
input?
will be a sounding board for the survey.
Okay.
Work.
I think it's going to be about their opinion as to different things on how they view the community versus how maybe we do. You know, everybody looks at it differently, and part of it is your age. You know, the different amenities you want to see, the things you don't, I mean, that just makes a difference what age you are. And what area you maybe you're in, you know, it's like education or whatever, you know, makes a difference. What field?
But I do think, you know, if you have to have a call meeting, you can come on, read it.
Okay. Well, and we can do whatever. I'm just gonna, my concern is if we have a special call meeting and then we have to go back and forth a little bit on all this, we're gonna end up slowing and then we're gonna end up missing timelines that we've tried to set. And
Well, they should, if they have if they're prepared to go, they should be able to give you that survey. I mean, to me, it wouldn't be an issue.
And I think if we had any changes, we can definitely make them in one meeting. Get consensus from us.
And I don't know these people. I don't, maybe I want to see what their work is. I don't know. I just want to see.
okay. We'll make
Can't
that
tell you
happen.
why, but it's just inside me says I need to read these.
I just think that I agree, you want to see it, it's great, but even if, I want to keep an open mind, because even if it's a question that you don't like, that's how you're gonna get honesty.
That's right.
And that's how you're gonna get exactly what this community
Important.
wants, even if it's not what you want. So I just think that's.
That's right. It's important to do that. Because everybody has different opinions. Absolutely. Well, that's first range. Sorry.
Well, and I think they're doing us a favor kind of doing this at the beginning, so it would be good for them to have input before they go in knowing what we're needing.
Right, because we're trying to meet a specific schedule with the parks and the,
Right,
and the pool and everything, so we're kind of front loading that, so.
and I don't want to do that
Right.
anymore. So,
Yeah. And like I say, if you tell me you have it tomorrow, I'll be there and I'll read.
Well, and that's like I said, I don't know for sure what their time frame is because we're not doing the project either. So
Well, I understand that, they ought to have a game plan.
well, and I think they're working on getting their end of everything and their timeline figured out for us. And that's where we're gonna have a meeting next week with them. So there'll be a little more clarity on that end of things, so.
Good deal.
Where's this company located?
They have offices in, I think, Kansas City, Omaha, Des Moines, and a lot of other places, several other places, but those are the kind of the key staff that's working on ours.
What age are they?
Does that really matter? I don't know. I typically don't try to guess that because I can be wrong.
Oh, dear. You need a wide range. Trust me.
So kind of with that, Wallace Park Ball Fields, met with Justin Snell and Scott Galichki, and so we're going to get some preliminary or some of the minor electrical issues taken care of. They're gonna work on getting the fields ready to go for this summer, so that's where that is as of right now that I know of, so. Any other questions on the comprehensive plan?
We get updates on it as we go along, don't we?
Yeah, there's scheduled at least 2, if not 3 times that they will come down and kind of present where they're at with things to council or some of them will be with planning commission and council and some will just be responses.
Good. Okay.
Code concerns, I know that we've had some of that raised, and I kind of wanted to touch on and give an update on some of those things, but I guess I want to make sure that I kind of explain where I feel like we are and what we're kind of trying to do, and if that needs to be adjusted, then we can adjust that. But I feel like we have the potential to spiral out of control with all these code things that get thrown at us, and I want to make sure that we're trying to get to that, but we've got all these other things that we're trying to do too, and I don't want to be busy chasing, putting out fires all the time, so I'm just trying to get. So what we're doing, we've got the code position looking to hire. I think we should be doing interviews in the next week or so. Is that still kind of on the schedule? And then that person would get in there and say in another month. And then really start working on addressing a lot of these code issues. I think I wanted to make sure that council understands that as soon as we have somebody, and even if we get them and they get started on some of these bigger issues day one, those issues are going to take a while to get addressed. Yeah, I mean, it will take a year to get some of them if people aren't willing to comply. And the time we give notices, respond to that, go back, ends up in court, and the time we get to a point where we can see movement, it will probably be a year on some of these bigger things. And so I just want to kind of iterate that we need a little patience on that, but we're going to be working towards that. With that, the house numbers, we've done a little bit of looking about what it would cost per letter. I think from a practical standpoint, I do not think that we want our city employees or anybody representing the city putting these numbers on houses. I think if we want to figure out a way that we provide numbers for people, maybe we can, that is something that I think could be worked on, but I don't think it's in the best interest of the city to have people going to private property to put numbers.
You know, I don't think so either. You know, some of that comes from just personal responsibility.
Mhm.
The homeowners are gonna make large needs to take care of that.
Yeah,
Well, it's just an education thing, people need to know what.
just an educational, yeah, and the importance of it, because if you need an ambulance, or you need somebody and they can't find you.
It's in the ordinance, I mean, they have to have, and it's however they get them there, whether they put them on themselves or if we furnish them. I drove around my ward and I was surprised, there's not that many houses that don't have numbers. But it's always the one house that doesn't that causes the problem. But, there aren't that many, but they all need to have a house number. And a lot of people don't even know that. The homeowners, the renters, they don't know that.
When we last met with the police on the survey, there was over 300 houses that either wasn't marked and couldn't find the marking on the house. And the biggest deal we need is they all need to be marked and they all need to be in a similar location so that the emergency people know where to get their spotlight to find the ambulance.
And somebody said some towns put them on the curb, mark them on the curb. Well, if you've got cars parked in front of the curb, you're not gonna see the house number,
Well,
so.
I'm working machines.
Yeah.
That wouldn't go too well on some of the asphalt curves.
But I think a lot, like if somebody doesn't have a house number, you call them and told them, they need to get a house number, and if they could come up to City Hall and get their number and then put them on themselves.
So is that something that council wants to provide members?
I don't think we
That's
should.
an expense,
What,
that's an expense.
it is, I don't know how much they would cost, but like you said 300 houses. but there may be more than that now.
Well, that's right. She may want to put real fancy numbers
Yeah.
on hers, and I may just want plain Jane numbers
Right,
on
yeah.
mine. So we have to kind of leave
Leave
that
it
up
out
to the
there,
homeowner.
There's supposed to be a certain size, and it's supposed to be placed at a certain.
Right.
So saying that education.
That's education.
So-
And I think there's a lot of people they are not aware of it.
And they can leave the other if they've already got a market that's in a bad, what we consider a bad spot. They can still leave that and have two numbers on it. I've got three numbers on my house, got one by the door, one on the pole of my front porch, and one by my garage. And that's all we can do.
But I do think we need to make a decision whether we're going to do it or not.
Well, I guess my thought would be is, if we don't want to provide numbers, then it's easier that we can just say we know that we're gonna try to educate and try to get, as we have people come in for building permits, we can try to ask that question and sure we tell them, hey, you need to make sure you have these, and as we see them, try to do a little better job of enforcing those.
Supposedly, that's what we've been doing for the last 15 years, and we haven't accomplished.
The house numbers.
We're telling them on new construction, building codes, and whenever they come in for permits, a whole lot of yards. And like I say, it hasn't solved the problem.
It's mostly your older homes that don't have the numbers on them. When I was driving on that road.
How effective is putting a notice on the utility bill?
Well, we probably don't have enough room to do that, do we?
And that's the
There's a little section where we can put, but people don't read it.
We just look at the,
Yeah.
I mean, I think ultimately, if you really want compliance, you're gonna have to go door to door, or basically address to address, and make that list and send out letters and then follow up, and that's how it's gonna happen.
see, that's what we were supposed to be doing before. We said the midnight guys have to go look and find all the houses, that didn't have house numbers, or they were in such a bad spot, or wasn't where they're supposed to be. And so they made a list, and like I say, it was left on my computer, that list was, when I left the place. But then we were supposed to educate them through those other methods, but we were also supposed to start making sure that they get notified. We just never got taken care of the notification of it.
If we bought if the city bought the lettering, I was wondering if, it wouldn't be that much money. I mean, like 300, maybe 1,200 houses. Well, 300, you said there were 300 in the whole city at that time, which there's probably more than that now. But let's just say there's 500. Some people have three numbers, some have two, some have one. I was thinking maybe the transient guest tax, maybe we could take the money from there.
That's not a tourism thing. I think that would be a good source for that. I think
Well,
if you're gonna do it, you take it out of the general fund.
Well, I don't think it would be that much money. And we're accomplishing something with
They're
it.
gonna get pretty mad if you start telling them
Yeah.
to do that.
Well, you could, somehow or other, we could let them know, we can pick your numbers up at the city hall. When something's free, they may come and get it.
I mean, one thing, we price some numbers. You can get numbers from Pat Signs for 50 cents a piece. We did 100 of each number, that's $500. Now, if we were gonna offer it, I think you only offer it
People
to
don't have.
the primary residence people, because if you're a landlord, you should be doing it yourself. We don't need to give you free numbers. If you're commercial, you're doing it yourself. I don't know how easy that is in our system to know whether they are a primary residence or not. Stephanie, is that
You can look it up, yeah.
okay? And then it would just be available upon request, but then that's still them having to request it, them having to know that they need to do it and them actually do it.
Or could someone call them and say, we noticed you don't have sign on your house, and, we're giving them away?
That would be part of that enforcement, going around to ensure that we had a list of all those. But that would take a lot of time to do all that, I think.
I think we got staff time available, but
I think it's just I think that it's an education thing again, and then, you know, people don't be calling, I guess you figure out what needs to be done that way.
Well,
I think a lot of people just don't know.
No,
you know what, you just put in a little flyer that says something about house numbers or something. They pay their water bill, but see it's laying there, I don't know. I don't know.
I just feel like if we order all these numbers, they're just gonna be sitting at City Hall, that's gonna be wasted. So I think people, I think the ones that aren't gonna comply are not gonna pick them up anyway.
Right.
So I feel like it's gonna be a waste of time, waste of resources.
But I do think a lot of people are not aware that they don't have, you know, that they don't have, a lot of them were on older houses. So, but it needs to be done.
I think you approach it with, from an emergency standpoint, you know, like you were talking about, Dave. That people, you know, if there's an emergency, they need to know where you are. So you have to have your numbers here, and they have to be this big. Like I said, I think a lot of people just don't think about it, they don't realize it.
They don't realize it until they have an emergency.
Right.
So do you know how long it took the midnight officers to go through? Couple weeks. Is that something we can just request on, have his midnight guys start a list for us, and then at least we know how many we've got, you know, even if it takes a month, we're better off when we figure it all out now, and kind of figure out how many we have, and then maybe we can start working on the list at that point.
I mean, we can do that. I mean, I think, I guess that's just, if we want to be, how proactive do we want to be on this? We want to be a little more proactive, and we want to get a list and get that out, then we'll figure out how to best get that done. If we just want to educate through the means that we have, and
That's
then,
the problem anymore. Nobody uses any certain thing anymore, because everything went to the internet. 80% of the people don't read the paper anymore. So you're getting mostly national and state news off the internet. Some people are getting it on Facebook, and that's a nightmare, because half the time it's not accurate.
Well, I think it's been an issue long enough that they just have, figure out a way to get a list, you know, talk to Don and see what his midnight guys can do about the next 2 to 4 weeks, come up with a list of the houses that aren't clearly marked at all that they would have trouble getting to, and then we start there. And kind of move forward.
The night shift, does it? The night shift,
They can do it.
okay. They might have trouble seeing.
Which may be the best thing.
well, I mean, that's, and I think that's where you get, I think we need to probably think about too, is if we're gonna do that, we probably ought to have them evaluate. Because some of those that probably have numbers aren't what they're supposed to be.
Right,
Yeah.
Some of them they can't go with it.
And so we probably ought to have,
And the-
here's tier one, is you don't have anything. Tier two is you've got something, but it doesn't really help us out.
right, it doesn't meet the code requirements, and here's what you have to do, and then we can start off, but at least that way we're making some action toward it, because they brought this up several years back, and I think it's an issue that we probably ought to.
I think I'm gonna look at mine.
Yeah.
I don't even know what's on.
But at least that way we're making
That's
some.
right, I know. My knees over this one.
It's just one of those things, you know, I don't know, like the older homes. Not something you go check out when you're buying a house, and the numbers are the right size and in the right place.
I think I do.
We'll get started on that. So the rock roll there on Hospital Drive, it's just north of Peoria. Kind of Randy found the history of that. We started that in 2003 with an inspection ticket and told them they needed to make some repairs. they did some repairs to a portion of that wall, but not to the whole thing, and they were told, okay, Grant, we like what you did, but you've got to do the rest of it. Never did anything, and then in 2015, our next record is that they came and got a permit to demo the wall and regrade the right of way. That's kind of where,
Demo the wall and what?
regrade the right of way.
Okay.
They got the permit to do that.
How are they going to do that? The angle of that.
I mean, I think
That's
that's,
gonna wash off onto the,
so, no work, we haven't seen any work done on that. I think ultimately, it is the property owner's responsibility to maintain that right of way. Whether they have the retaining wall there or potentially regrade it, and I think we'd have to kind of look on that. I don't know if there's any restrictions on how steep they can have that. But either way, the ball kind of needs to be in their court, or is in their court. I think from our standpoint, we would just kind of, we've done this with a couple others, is we would just start with a letter saying, hey, this hasn't been addressed like it needs to be. You got X amount of time to get a plan back to us for review, and then just kind of start it that way. And if we have to start pushing a little bit more, we can.
What about the question of the utilities on the building?
That's the property owner
I
has
know
to
that.
figure that out. And
But-
he can call the utility companies, 811, Big Safe, they'll mark them. He won't know how deep they are, but then he would know what's there.
And then if he wants to take the wall down, he can.
If he
And
can,
grade
and
it,
if they have approved, if they're good with him doing so, they're very deep enough. Because that's probably something that we would, we would look at that on his. I mean, I don't know, I guess if he's had it in 15, that permit's kind of expired, he'd have to do another permit, but we would review that, okay, yeah, the utility companies are good with this and you can do it.
So because of, it seems like we've got several issues around town where there really hasn't been much code enforcement. Would it make sense to make for you guys to have like a master list of, okay, here's the 15 most egregious violations that we have, and this is number one, because I know we've still got the West Wheel building, the old shipment liquor building that we've got to figure out something to do with. There's the house on Cascade.
401.
Yeah, and I'm gonna talk about that one here in just a second.
So, maybe because we don't have code enforcement right now, and I agree with you, it's probably gonna take a year to get, or better to get things back in shape. Maybe we just have a list of, here's all the violations, but we've determined that these 10 or these 5 are the ones that we need to start
And
focusing.
we're working on it, we've kind of got that list
Okay,
started already,
good.
knowing that we've had some of those around, and so.
Because it's gonna take a while, because you still gotta hire somebody and get them in. And then like this, it's kind of on us. It started in 2003. It's not like we can go to them tomorrow and say, you gotta fix it by the end of the week.
Right.
Because it's kind of on us. too.
Well, and I think I think part of that is how much did we want to push him, because sometimes you go to push somebody, then they start hollering, and then, so it was a little bit of that, but if that's where we want to be, we can start pushing on that and encouraging compliance.
And the house next door, there is a rock wall was starting probably there too. It's gonna be a problem.
Is it new code enforcement person on City Hall? Is that what you said? Out of the building? Will they be out of
Yes,
City Hall?
they'll be out of City Hall, yeah. That's the plan.
Will they have enforcement power?
As
To write tickets or
Yes.
summons?
Yeah, we looked at that because there was a little bit of concern about, that's why they needed to be a PD, that lead, Tetweiler asked him about that, and kind of reviewed that, and the way the code's written, they can, they'll be able to do that. Any other questions on that?
So you're gonna send out a letter.
We will, yeah, we'll make basically do an inspection and then a letter of, I'm not sure what we'll title it, but like a letter of action or something like that, like here's what we found, here's what we know of the history, we need this to be addressed, and
And what about the ones that are falling into the, onto the hospital right now? I mean, can they be picked up and they're dangerous? I mean, a car could hit them. There's some. that
I
are
haven't seen
ready to
any on
drop.
the roadway yet.
There are, it's hanging over the curb, and they'll be dropping before long.
Well, I think if they drop, we'll pick those up, but I don't know that we're gonna go clean that up right now. Because then there'll be the concern that we took away his material and all.
Yeah.
If it gets in the roadway, we'll clean it up.
Well, somebody needs to kind of watch it, because there are some lots that didn't raise it up.
Different topic, but have we heard anything on the shooting?
I mean, other than what we've talked about before, that we don't have it as a dangerous structure.
Right, it's boarded up, and
And everything.
do they have any future plans of actually getting started again, or?
Not that I know of, that's something that may be a conversation coming up. I don't feel like I can say anything now on that, so.
No, it's not on the condemned list now.
No,
They got it
it-
done.
it- it's-
It's on the condemned list.
It's not, it's not on the
The
condemned.
guy bought it from a guy, somebody that did it.
Nobody knows. As far as I know.
Yeah, somebody bid on it and bought it as an investment, and then when they actually looked at it and seen that what it took, then they didn't want it. And that's where this guy came in and bought it from him for the dollar.
But now then, I think the taxes are maybe,
Yeah, there's 3 years back to that.
he has,
I don't think he's paid for anything. Pretty much all the stuff is volunteer labor, volunteer materials. And they've got it this far, but we can't just let it sit there forever.
they did enough to get it off the condemned list.
And I know, I think Bill's watching that. When we talked last time, we kind of got it. It's not a weekly thing, but it's on the radar thing to be kind of watching that in case we need to ramp that up again, so. Any other questions on that? 401 Kaskaskia, East Kaskaskia, I think that was the address of that house. It had been condemned. That was in
4 years ago.
almost 5, 2016. They pulled a permit in 2017 for that, and I think there was an extension of deadlines to allow them to try to work on this. They have done some work to kind of shore up the foundation. We've had an engineer involved, and we've actually got a review or interior remodel review setting that Bill's reviewing now, and waiting to hear back from the architect. So they are trying to work on this. I think the approach here is probably, rather than just letting it kind of go as is, maybe we do the same sort of thing where we kind of give that letter of, hey, this has been kind of hanging out there. We want to make sure that there's regular updates as far as from them to us, and so that line of communication is open. So it doesn't just sit out there. Because I think they made some investments in there to kind of, again, keep it from not being a dangerous structure at this point. And we've been trying to make other improvements. Any questions?
So you're not going to do another condemnation.
Well,
Send them a letter.
I guess at this point, I think looking at what they've done there, they probably are outside of what we would want to condemn anyway. I think we probably just
I
want
think all they've done is they go in every once in a while and put a new window in or a door. There hasn't been any activity there.
well, they've had some engineering done on that. They've done some bracing on the foundation, so The engineering was done, last year.
We did that.
Douglas R. Lloyd Architect was, who that was. doing.
That's, we're waiting on that report to get to Bill so we can review it and.
No, that was in early, they've actually got a permit for an interior remodel that goes, trying to work with the
Okay.
architect
Okay.
to finalize.
But that was 2 years ago or a year ago.
A year ago that letter, we had a letter from the architect with the plan of action.
That was stamped and everything, by the,
And have they done anything through this?
they shored up the foundation wall, that was the problem, they shored that up, great.
Yeah.
For the engineer letter.
And I think it looks like they demoed the inside and put a new one.
Right now, Bill's reviewing the architect plans and waiting for the quality architect for the comments. So due to the unique circumstances of construction and everything, he required design.
Well, we'll take a look at it.
Well, and honestly, I think
I know the neighbors have complained about it many times.
I think we have to understand that it is, sometimes you tear down a house, and granted, Paola's are different, we do have some infill activity going on, but you tear down a house, it's sometimes hard to get that house, another house put back in that spot. And so if we can work with them, even if it takes a long time, it may be better to work several years with somebody to get improvements made versus just tearing it down. Tearing it down is a cost to us, and that may be a cost that we never recoup. Because they may just walk away from all of that.
Well, that's what I was just telling Marty, that we had done the one on the WIA that they eventually tore down, and then the other one on English. The other house, and that ended up getting sold, and somebody came in and remodeled it, and it's already been resold. So the process does work. I just want to make sure we're staying on top of the process and not letting things linger, but it has been more difficult without a code enforcement, so.
But that was such sorry shape to get the foundation.
Oh, yeah.
Horrible
It's-
thing.
And I think that's what started the process on the shipping building on West Wheel, was it was a dangerous structure, and we had to do something with it, so as long as we can work with them and give them a little bit of time and make sure it's moving along and it's not floundering, but again, I think it's gonna depend on you guys having a list and saying, okay, here's our top 10 priorities that we've got to take care of, and we can add stuff to the list, but we need to take care of these top 10 first.
And those are the things that Bill should be involved in, because
Yeah.
a code person is not gonna be trained in that kind of expertise right off.
Well, no, but I think that's why I think it's important to have that position at City Hall, because oftentimes it starts out as a code issue that you see, and it either deteriorates into, hey, this is more of a structural building issue, or they see the initial code issue, and then as they're looking at that and reviewing that and working through that, then they're like, oh, well, there's also this, and that's more of a building issue. And the idea is that hopefully, as we get that, they can work together on, hey, I've got this, well, I need you to come look at this, because it's looking like this is something that we need to address from the building side of things.
I totally agree with you that it needs to be at City Hall, and I think it should be a full-time position. But my next question is, what do we do about dogs?
The animal control would still be at the PD. And I've talked with Dawn about that, because, ultimately, there are more hours that we don't have people staffed if we were to use the code person to do that, than there are hours that we have them staffed. And so it just kind of made sense. Now, that doesn't mean that if PD's is tied up and they call the code person, that they may not be able to go over there and help do that. We'll have to kind of get them cross-trained in some of that. But I think the intention is to have that housed at PD, so that, like I said, the coverage time is going to be a lot greater up there than it is.
CD picks up 70% on them.
Yeah, just, if you just look at the sheer hours of work, PD's are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And code enforcement is 40 hours, and so it leaves a lot of outside time that doesn't fall into that, so.
So who's gonna send the letter out, since we don't have a court code? enforcement?
That'll be, Bill will do that, Bill and Randy. Any other concerns on that or questions? The only other thing that I had was Baptiste Extension. I wanted to kind of give everybody an update on that. We worked through getting some of the easements finalized on that, so that project is ready to go. There were some questions with Elizabeth Layton Center, some parking, and I think we're getting to where we got a resolution for that. And that project is still slated for March 15th is kind of the start date. I don't know if they'll be in here tearing up the road, but that's when the clock starts ticking for the contractor.
That's what it is done.
Does council want to do a groundbreaking ceremony for that?
No, I don't know.
We don't get gold shovels? Come on.
Okay, I'll take that as a lackluster, not really, don't care.
Maybe on the medium.
Yeah.
Take it out.
Sometimes I speak too soon.
If you change your mind between now and maybe say next week, after next week, we'll verify that part. I think we could still get together if we knew.
There you go.
Now, I might be interested when they break ground on the Paola crossing.
Yeah.
That would be really exciting.
I think the last groundbreaking we did was the table pool.
The dog park,
Yeah, down there we got shovels. I didn't,
we didn't get a shovel one time.
no, we didn't get a shovel today.
That's a long kind of show.
Right. We did a shovel, but not the kind we used out there. I think I still got my shovel.
We did one of the trails too. I think we've done one.
Yeah, we did do one of the trails. I remember that down there.
But I would agree with you when we start the Paola crossings, that would be a big one.
Yes, we need
And there was
people.
one, there's the sheriff's building.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
I think if we went back and looked, we're doing the one.
There's a new curve.
There's a shovel. That's probably also do a shovel so we can dig it out. Right. Let me give you a shovel and I'll do it.
That's kind of all that I had for tonight. Any other questions that you have on what we covered?
Is the fire station still open for homeless to go in? Or was that just when the weather got down, temperature got down, so?
There's a warming.
That was
station.
kind of a warming station when the temperature got so cold.
It got closed because they vandalized the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's reopening.
Yeah.
But they did close, they are closing it at 3, which is probably good.
Huh?
They said they are closing it at 3, which
Yeah.
is probably good.
Yeah.
I don't know why they keep tearing up the bathrooms, it makes no sense.
Oh, you know, that's just shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, it's probably people that don't even use the gym. If I were to guess.
Oh, I'm sure
The
they.
bathrooms, when you walk in from.
Right from the front door, they're on both sides,
The men's are on the left, women's on the right.
and you can't put a camera in them.
Why?
In a bathroom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you put on the people going in.
Yeah.
We've got that.
And did you see anything on those?
They've made several arrests over the years just off the cameras.
Yeah.
Because they narrowed down to a few suspects and they interview them, and sometimes they get confession or one turns on the other.
Yeah, I think we have a good idea who's been causing some of the problem, but can't quite get everything we need, so.
I have another question.
Mhm.
Have you hired somebody to, manage the pool in the sun?
Sherry Ball does that for us.
Is that in the progress? I mean, you're going to open it or?
Yeah, she's already advertised for, positions down there. I think that's still open, because they run it through the week before spring break or something like that. But But it's open, and I know that she's already got some applicants. I don't know the breakdown of those that are lifeguards, but that's gonna be the challenge, is making sure we get the lifeguards. But the plan is that we will open, and if we don't have enough lifeguards, we may have some limited hours, but we'll at least be open most of the day, most of the time.
I had someone ask me about spring cleanup this year. Have you guys,
About what?
spring cleanup, you what?
April 17th.
April 17th is, okay, or waste manager, are they doing it? April 17th? Okay. I had somebody ask about already.
And we probably won't be advertising that until
Right.
shortly before, because if not,
Right,
Trent's gonna get his stuff out there tonight when he gets home.
that's where I do my furniture shopping, come on.
Go look and see if you have a text number and then.
You know,
Figure stuff out.
last year, my poor neighbor down the street put all her junk out that gasket and sat there. I finally paid something.
Yeah, there's a few already out, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
I said, "You're dumb."
I haven't picked them up. 'cause
Last
it's-
year,
Yeah,
there were some piles for months.
Well, you know, they expected it to be there,
Right.
they piled it, and then
Yeah.
they did.
on.
And then there it sat, and people complained to me, and I said, well, that's it, so I just called in a favor and paid somebody, and
Yeah.
so we advertise that up there.
yeah, maybe 2 weeks, but not much more than that.
The trash. people-
they're already.
Section of that this year.
Yeah.
They did a great job.
Anything else? That's all.